A young woman sits across from a researcher in a sparse room, her fingers drumming nervously on the table. The researcher slides a puzzle toward her, a seemingly simple arrangement of colored blocks. "Take your time," he says, but she has already begun. Her hands move with surprising precision, rearranging pieces at a speed that makes the researcher blink twice. 37 seconds later, she places the final block, a task that typically takes subjects 8 minutes to complete. "How did you do that?" the researcher asks, genuinely perplexed. She shrugs. "I just saw where everything belonged." 3 miles away, in the same city, another participant struggles with the identical puzzle. After 20 minutes, he has managed to solve only half of it, frustration etched across his face. Both individuals are neurotypical, healthy adults with similar educational backgrounds. Yet their cognitive performances exist in entirely different realms. What explains this vast chasm in human intellectual capacity? Is it merely a matter of practice? Or is there something fundamentally different in how these two brains process information? And more intriguingly, if we mapped the entire spectrum of human intelligence, from the profoundly limited to the extraordinarily gifted, what would that landscape reveal about the nature of thought itself? The concept of measuring intelligence has fascinated humanity since ancient times. The Chinese Emperor Xuanzong of Tang established the imperial examination system in 702 CE to identify the most intellectually capable individuals for government service. Plato's Academy in Athens selected students based on their ability to solve geometric problems. But the systematic, scientific approach to quantifying intelligence is surprisingly recent, barely older than the automobile. In 1904, French psychologist Alfred Binet received an unusual government commission: develop a method to identify children who might struggle in mainstream education. Working with his colleague Theodore Simon, Binet created a series of increasingly difficult tasks that measured various cognitive abilities. The results were expressed as a mental age compared to the child's chronological age. Intelligence is not a single, unchangeable quotient, Binet cautioned his contemporaries. It is malleable and complex. His warning would go largely unheeded. When Binet's test crossed the Atlantic, Stanford University psychologist Lewis Terman modified it into what became known as the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scale. Crucially, Terman introduced the intelligence quotient, or IQ, a score derived by dividing mental age by chronological age and multiplying by 100. This mathematical transformation created the foundation for what many would come to see as a definitive measure of human cognitive capability. Dr. Grace Matheson, a cognitive neuroscientist at the University of Michigan Center for Human Potential, explains the historical context. Terman believed he was creating an objective measure of innate intellectual capacity. But what he actually created was something far more complex: a culturally mediated assessment of certain types of problem-solving abilities that our society particularly values. By the 1930s, IQ testing had spread worldwide. Corporations used it for hiring. Schools used it for placement. Governments used it to determine who could immigrate or serve in specialized military roles. This single number had become a sorting mechanism for human potential. But beneath this apparent simplicity lurked profound questions. What exactly was being measured? How accurately did these tests capture the multifaceted nature of human intelligence? And perhaps most importantly, what happens at the extremes of this spectrum? As testing methodologies improved through the 20th century, researchers began mapping the distribution of human intelligence scores. What emerged was not simply a continuum but distinct zones of cognitive functioning, what some researchers would eventually characterize as levels of intelligence. Dr. Julian Prescott of Harvard's Laboratory for Cognitive Neuroscience describes it this way: think of intelligence not as a straight line but as a landscape with plateaus, valleys, and peaks. At certain thresholds, qualitative shifts occur in how information is processed, connections are made, and problems are solved. This brings us to a fundamental question. What are these levels, and what happens within each one? How does the brain of someone with an IQ of 70 differ from someone with an IQ of 100, 130, or 160? And what can these differences tell us about the nature of intelligence itself? Maria Gonzalez was told her son would never read. Born with a rare genetic condition affecting neural development, 5-year-old Elijah scored 65 on the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children. This placed him in what clinicians classify as the intellectually disabled range, the first level on our cognitive spectrum. The neurologist explained it like this, Maria recalls. Most children can hold multiple ideas in their mind simultaneously. Elijah can only manage one or two at a time. It is as if his working memory has significantly fewer slots available. Neuroscientist Dr. Sarah Chun has studied level 1 cognition for 15 years at Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Her research uses functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, to observe brain activity patterns during problem-solving tasks. What we see in individuals with IQs below 70 is not simply less thinking, but fundamentally different patterns of neural recruitment. Dr. Chun explains. The frontal networks responsible for executive functions like planning and abstract reasoning show reduced connectivity. The brain attempts to solve problems using more concrete, immediate processing systems. This reliance on concrete thinking manifests in several characteristic ways. Abstract concepts become extraordinarily difficult. Time relationships, cause and effect reasoning, and hypothetical scenarios present particular challenges. Yet Dr. Chun emphasizes a crucial point. Limited abstract reasoning does not mean limited emotional depth or human connection. These individuals often demonstrate remarkable emotional intelligence and social awareness. The case of Jason McHugh challenges our understanding of level 1 cognition. With an IQ measured at 68, Jason struggled with academic subjects throughout school. Basic arithmetic remained persistently challenging. Yet at age 19, he demonstrated an extraordinary ability. He could listen to a piece of music once and reproduce it perfectly on piano. Islands of exceptional ability within overall cognitive limitation are not uncommon, explains Dr. Prescott. This suggests intelligence is not a single faculty, but a constellation of specialized cognitive systems that can develop unevenly. For decades, researchers believed level 1 cognition represented permanent limitation. But longitudinal studies beginning in the 1980s revealed surprising plasticity. A landmark 2007 study tracked 42 children with IQs between 55 and 70 over 15 years. With intensive cognitive training and supportive environments, 38% showed increases of 10 to 15 IQ points, enough to cross the threshold into the next level. These findings raise profound questions. Is intelligence truly fixed? Or have we been measuring the wrong things, confusing current performance with inherent potential? Robert Jenkins works as a shipping coordinator at a mid-sized manufacturing company in Ohio. His IQ, measured during a vocational assessment, is 85, solidly within level 2, which encompasses approximately 16% of the population. I know I'm not book smart, Robert acknowledges. School was always hard, but I can organize a warehouse better than anyone, and I never forget a face or a name. Level 2 cognition represents a critical transition point where abstract thinking becomes increasingly accessible but requires significant effort and external structure. Dr. Emily Woodson of Stanford's Cognitive Development Laboratory explains, at this level, we see individuals who can grasp abstract concepts, but the cognitive load of doing so is substantial. Multi-step processes often need to be broken down into explicit sequences. Neurologically, level 2 brains show interesting patterns. Working memory, the ability to temporarily hold and manipulate information, typically allows for 3 to 4 items simultaneously, compared to the 5 to 7 items in average cognition. Processing speed measurements show operations taking approximately 1.3 to 1.5 times longer than level 3, average cognition. Yet these differences don't translate to universal limitation. A groundbreaking 2019 study by the University of Washington identified specific domains where level 2 individuals frequently demonstrate strengths: practical problem solving, emotional recognition, and procedural learning, the ability to master physical sequences and routines. Dr. Grace Matheson emphasizes these findings. Our research indicates that level 2 cognition often correlates with enhanced attention to environmental details and social cues that more abstract thinkers might miss. There's a groundedness that can be extraordinarily adaptive in many contexts. The professional outcomes for individuals in this range vary tremendously based on educational opportunities and social support. While advanced academic subjects may present significant challenges, technical fields often play to their strengths. Vocational studies show above-average performance in fields ranging from healthcare support to skilled trades to culinary arts. Perhaps most revealing is what happens when individuals at this level receive targeted cognitive training. A longitudinal study following 1,200 Level 2 adolescents through adulthood found that specific executive function training produced significant improvements in life outcomes, even when IQ scores remained stable. This suggests something profound, says Dr. Matheson. What we call intelligence may be less about raw processing capacity and more about developing effective cognitive strategies. The right mental tools can bridge many of the functional gaps between Level 2 and Level 3 cognition. When Jennifer Adams takes her seat at the Cognitive Assessment Center, she represents the mathematical center of human intelligence distribution. With an IQ of 100, precisely average, she exemplifies Level 3 cognition, where approximately 50% of the human population resides. Average intelligence is perhaps the most misunderstood category, explains Dr. Raul Mendez of Columbia University's Cognitive Science Department. We tend to equate average with unremarkable, but the cognitive capabilities at this level are actually extraordinary by any objective standard. Level 3 cognition enables abstract reasoning across multiple domains simultaneously. It supports the acquisition of complex symbolic systems like written language, mathematical notation, and professional jargons. It allows for hypothetical thinking, the ability to mentally model scenarios that don't currently exist. What distinguishes this level is cognitive flexibility, notes Dr. Prescott. Level 3 thinkers can typically shift between concrete and abstract modes of thought, applying different cognitive strategies based on the demands of the task. Neurologically, Level 3 brains demonstrate what researchers call adaptive network reconfiguration, the ability to rapidly form new neural coalitions to address novel problems. Working memory typically maintains 5 to 7 items simultaneously, enabling multi-step operations without external aids. Historically, human civilization has been built primarily by Level 3 cognition. From agricultural innovations to industrial manufacturing to digital technology, the complex problems of society have largely been solved through the collaborative efforts of average-range thinkers. This reveals something critical about intelligence, Dr. Matheson explains. Cognitive horsepower matters far less than how it's deployed. Level 3 thinkers who develop disciplined thinking habits, effective collaboration skills, and domain expertise can achieve remarkable outcomes. The brain at this level demonstrates another key characteristic: significant response to environmental enrichment. A 2015 study tracked cognitive performance in 340 adults with IQs between 95 and 105. Those engaged in complex, novel learning experiences showed enhanced performance over time, particularly in fluid intelligence tasks. The brain at Level 3 appears optimally balanced between stability and plasticity, notes Dr. Chun. There's enough neural robustness to maintain consistent performance, yet enough flexibility to adapt to new challenges. This plasticity points to something essential about human cognition. Intelligence is not a fixed property, but a dynamic interaction between innate capacity and accumulated experience. Level 3 cognition proves remarkably responsive to quality instruction, deliberate practice, and cognitive strategy training. Yet, as we approach the upper boundary of Level 3, we begin to observe subtle shifts in information processing. At IQs around 110, cognitive patterns start displaying characteristics that will become more pronounced in the next level, where we transition from typical to gifted cognition. Professor Eleanor Wright teaches organic chemistry at a mid-sized liberal arts college. With an IQ of 117, she represents Level 4 cognition, a range encompassing approximately 13.5% of the population. I've always processed information quickly, Professor Wright reflects. In conversations, I'm often several steps ahead, anticipating where the discussion is going. It was actually a social liability in my younger years. I'd respond to points people hadn't verbally made yet. This accelerated processing represents a defining characteristic of Level 4 cognition. Information integration, the brain's ability to combine multiple inputs into coherent patterns, operates approximately 15 to 20% faster than at level 3. This creates a distinctive subjective experience that many level 4 thinkers describe as connecting dots more rapidly than peers. Neuroimaging studies reveal intriguing differences at this level. Dr. Michael Patel's research at UCLA used magnetoencephalography, MEG, to map neural firing patterns during problem-solving tasks. Level 4 brains show what we call enhanced recruitment efficiency, Dr. Patel explains. They activate precisely the neural networks needed for a specific task with less extraneous activity. This efficiency enables level 4 thinkers to manage higher cognitive loads without exhaustion. Complex material that might overwhelm level 3 cognition becomes accessible, though still requiring significant effort. Academic environments tend to favor these capabilities. Most graduate students and professionals in intellectually demanding fields score in this range. Yet level 4 cognition remains firmly tethered to conventional reasoning patterns. These individuals excel within established frameworks but rarely challenge fundamental assumptions. Innovation typically occurs through incremental improvements rather than paradigm shifts. Level 4 represents optimal functioning within normative cognition, explains Dr. Prescott. These individuals become the experts, the specialists, the highly competent professionals who form the intellectual backbone of complex organizations. The educational experiences of level 4 students reveal both advantages and challenges. They typically grasp new concepts quickly, requiring fewer repetitions than their level 3 peers. However, this rapid acquisition can lead to gaps in foundational knowledge, as they may intuitively jump ahead without mastering intermediate steps. Dr. Matheson notes another pattern. Level 4 thinkers often develop what we call intellectual specialization earlier than level 3 peers. By late adolescence, they've typically identified domains where their cognitive style yields the greatest returns, and they begin concentrating their efforts accordingly. This specialization produces a curious phenomenon. In their areas of focus, level 4 thinkers may perform at levels indistinguishable from those with higher IQs. Outside these domains, the limitations of their general cognitive capacity become more apparent. As we approach the upper boundary of level 4, around IQ 120, we begin to observe the emergence of cognitive characteristics that will become dominant in level 5, where quantitative differences in processing capacity begin to yield qualitatively different types of thinking. When Dr. Thomas Reynolds, a theoretical physicist, encountered a particularly elegant mathematical proof during his graduate studies, he described a distinctive experience. It wasn't just that I understood the logic. I felt it aesthetically, like listening to a perfect musical phrase. The mathematics had an emotional resonance. With an IQ of 125, Dr. Reynolds exemplifies level 5 cognition, a range encompassing roughly 6.7% of the population. At this level, information processing begins to acquire qualitative differences from typical cognition. Level 5 represents the first threshold where cognitive capacity enables not just accelerated learning but fundamentally different relationships with knowledge domains, explains Dr. Prescott. Abstract systems become objects of intuitive manipulation rather than effortful calculation. This shift manifests neurologically through what researchers call hypercommunication between brain regions. fMRI studies reveal that level 5 brains form more robust connections between normally specialized networks. Areas responsible for logical reasoning show unusually strong links to regions processing sensory input and emotional responses. These enhanced neural highways allow level 5 thinkers to simultaneously engage analytical and intuitive processing, notes Dr. Chun. They're more likely to report aha moments and insights that emerge apparently from nowhere, actually the product of unconscious parallel processing. Level 5 cognition brings distinctive advantages in academic and professional settings. Complex, abstract material that challenges level 4 thinkers becomes readily accessible. Multi-step logical chains can be held and manipulated mentally without external aids. Pattern recognition accelerates, allowing these individuals to make connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. Yet this cognitive profile creates unique challenges. Many level 5 thinkers report difficulties explaining their thought processes to others. Ideas that emerge through intuitive leaps rather than step-by-step reasoning can appear mysterious or poorly supported to colleagues, despite being ultimately correct. There's a communication gap that often develops, explains Dr. Matheson. Level 5 thinkers frequently move between concrete and abstract thinking so rapidly that they omit explanatory steps obvious to them but essential for others. Educational histories of Level 5 individuals often include periods of boredom and disengagement. Traditional instructional pacing may feel excruciatingly slow, leading to underachievement despite high potential. A 2018 longitudinal study found that 42% of individuals with IQs between 120 to 129 experienced at least one period of significant academic underperformance. The ideal learning environment for Level 5 cognition emphasizes conceptual depth rather than repetition, notes educational psychologist Dr. Rachel Williams. These students thrive when allowed to pursue topics vertically, diving deep into specific areas, rather than covering material broadly. Level 5 represents a critical transition point in another respect. It marks the threshold where specialized expertise can occasionally compensate for raw cognitive capacity. A Level 5 thinker with deep domain knowledge may outperform even Level 6 or 7 individuals who lack familiarity with the specific field. As we approach the upper boundary of Level 5, around IQ 130, cognitive patterns begin displaying characteristics that will define Level 6, where we enter the realm of what psychologists classify as gifted intelligence. At age 15, Emma Vaughn was simultaneously frustrated and fascinated by her advanced placement physics class. The equations seemed like crude approximations, she recalls. I kept asking about exceptions and edge cases until my teacher finally said, "That's graduate-level material. Just focus on the formulas for now." With an IQ of 138, Emma exemplifies Level 6 cognition, a range encompassing approximately 2% of the population. At this level, the quantitative advantages in processing speed and capacity begin producing thinking that differs qualitatively from the previous levels. Level 6 cognition represents the point where conventional educational frameworks often become inadequate, explains Dr. Prescott. These individuals don't just learn more quickly, they learn differently, seeking underlying principles rather than applications, questioning fundamental assumptions, and making connections across traditionally separate domains. Neurologically, Level 6 brains demonstrate what researchers call high-efficiency networks. Dr. Elise Thompson's research at Stanford used diffusion tensor imaging to map white matter pathways, the brain's communication infrastructure, in individuals across the IQ spectrum. What we found was striking, Dr. Thompson explains. Level 6 brains show significantly enhanced myelination in key pathways connecting frontal executive networks with both analytical and creative processing regions. Information travels with fewer hops between critical brain areas. This neural efficiency enables several distinctive cognitive characteristics. Working memory capacity typically extends to 7 to 9 items simultaneously, compared to 5 to 7 in average cognition. Processing speed measurements show operations occurring 25 to 40% faster than Level 4. But most notably, Level 6 thinkers demonstrate exceptional cognitive flexibility, the ability to rapidly switch between different representational systems and problem-solving approaches. What particularly distinguishes this level is intellectual autonomy, notes Dr. Matheson. Level 6 thinkers reliably generate novel frameworks when existing ones prove inadequate. They don't just master established knowledge, they extend and transform it. This capacity for independent knowledge generation creates distinctive educational patterns. Level 6 students typically seek primary sources rather than summaries, prefer self-directed exploration to structured instruction, and may develop expertise in niche areas with minimal external guidance. A revealing 2012 study tracked the learning behaviors of 86 individuals with IQs between 130 and 145. When encountering new domains, they demonstrated what researchers called structural learning, extracting the deep organizational principles of a field before mastering specific content. This inverted approach allows rapid assimilation of new information but can create initial misalignments with traditional instruction. The professional trajectories of Level 6 individuals often involve field-crossing innovations. They frequently serve as bridges between disciplines, identifying applications of concepts from one domain to problems in another. A disproportionate number become entrepreneurs, researchers, or specialists in emerging fields where established expertise is still developing. Yet level 6 cognition brings distinctive challenges. These individuals often report feeling intellectually isolated, struggling to find peers who share their depth of interest or processing style. The gap between their own understanding and conventional frameworks can create communication difficulties in both directions. There's a phenomenon we call translation fatigue, explains Dr. Williams. Level 6 thinkers must constantly downshift their natural thought processes to engage with typical educational and professional environments. This creates a significant cognitive load that can be exhausting over time. As we approach the upper boundary of level 6 around IQ 145, we begin observing cognitive patterns that will define level 7, where we enter the realm of what psychologists classify as profoundly gifted intelligence, occurring in approximately 1 in 1,000 individuals. When 12-year-old Joshua Patterson encountered calculus for the first time, something unexpected happened. It wasn't like learning, he later explained to researchers. It was like remembering something I'd always known. The notation was new, but the concepts felt immediately familiar, like they were already part of how I think. With an IQ above 160, Joshua represents level 7 cognition, a range encompassing fewer than 0.1% of the population. At this extreme upper boundary of human intellectual capacity, cognition operates in ways that can seem almost alien to typical experience. Level 7 represents a cognitive threshold where quantitative advantages become so substantial that qualitatively different mental operations emerge, explains Dr. Prescott. These individuals don't just think faster or remember more. They process information in fundamentally different ways. Neurobiologically, level 7 brains show distinctive characteristics. Dr. Samantha Warren's research at MIT used quantitative electroencephalography, QEEG, to compare neural oscillation patterns across the intelligence spectrum. Level 7 brains demonstrate what we call hypersynchrony, coordinated gamma wave activity across widely distributed networks, Dr. Warren explains. Regions that typically operate independently show unusually coherent activation patterns during complex tasks. This neural integration enables several defining cognitive features. Working memory capacity may extend to 9 to 11 items simultaneously. Information processing occurs at speeds 40 to 60% faster than average. Most distinctively, level 7 cognition demonstrates extraordinary pattern recognition across disparate domains, connecting ideas and concepts that others perceive as entirely unrelated. What truly distinguishes this level is cognitive dimensionality, notes Dr. Chun. Most people, even very intelligent people, think sequentially along established pathways. Level 7 thinkers perceive multiple solution paths simultaneously, evaluating them in parallel rather than sequentially. This parallel processing creates the subjective experience many level 7 individuals describe as seeing the answer rather than calculating it. Complex problems that require step-by-step analysis for others may yield immediate intuitive solutions, often without conscious awareness of the intervening logical steps. Educational histories of level 7 individuals frequently include both exceptional achievement and significant friction with traditional systems. A longitudinal study of 45 children with IQs above 145 found that 89% had experienced serious school adjustment problems despite their capabilities. The pace, structure, and sequential nature of conventional education proved fundamentally misaligned with their cognitive needs. The typical curriculum presents information in linear sequences with carefully scaffolded complexity, explains Dr. Williams. But level 7 cognition naturally operates in nonlinear, networked patterns. These students perceive the whole conceptual landscape immediately and find the step-by-step journey tedious or constraining. This mismatch often produces a paradoxical outcome. Some of the most intellectually capable individuals struggle within educational systems designed to develop intellectual capacity. The restrictions intended to support typical learners can actively impede those at the highest cognitive levels. Professional trajectories of level 7 individuals reveal distinctive patterns. They disproportionately gravitate toward fields involving complex systems, theoretical frameworks, or fundamental research. Many report that only the most challenging intellectual domains provide sufficient engagement to maintain their interest. Yet perhaps the most striking characteristic of Level 7 cognition is its capacity for what researchers call cognitive innovation, the generation of genuinely novel frameworks that transform how problems are conceptualized. From Einstein's reimagining of spacetime to Claude Shannon's development of information theory, many paradigm-shifting advances have emerged from minds operating at this cognitive level. These individuals don't just solve problems within existing paradigms, notes Dr. Matheson. They create new paradigms that redefine what questions are worth asking. Yet Level 7 cognition brings profound challenges. Many report experiencing what psychologists call existential isolation, a pervasive sense that their fundamental experience of reality differs from those around them. Finding true intellectual peers can be extraordinarily difficult, with potential matches representing less than 1 in 1,000 individuals in the general population. This isolation creates vulnerability to psychological difficulties despite cognitive strengths. A 2016 study found that individuals with IQs above 145 showed elevated rates of existential depression, anxiety, and social adjustment difficulties compared to those with more typical intelligence profiles. There's a price to seeing what others cannot see, reflects Dr. Prescott. The same cognitive capacity that enables extraordinary insight can create a profound sense of differentness that challenges human connection. The 7 levels of intelligence we have explored reveal a fundamental truth. Human cognitive capacity spans an extraordinary range, from profound limitation to astonishing capability. But this recognition forces us to confront a critical question. What exactly is intelligence? For nearly a century, we have operated under what might be called the horsepower model, the assumption that intelligence represents raw processing capacity, a singular quality that simply exists in greater or lesser amounts across individuals. The IQ test, despite its sophisticated evolution, fundamentally embodies this perspective. But our journey through the 7 levels reveals something far more complex and nuanced. What we call intelligence appears to be not one thing but many, a constellation of interrelated cognitive capacities that can vary independently and develop unevenly. Dr. Grace Matheson's groundbreaking research at Michigan has identified what she calls the 7 pillars of cognition, distinct neural systems that contribute to overall intellectual function. 1. Processing speed, how quickly information moves through neural networks. 2. Working memory, how many items can be simultaneously maintained and manipulated. 3. Pattern recognition, the ability to extract meaningful structure from complex data. 4. Cognitive flexibility, the capacity to shift between different representational systems. 5. Sustained attention, the ability to maintain focus despite distractions or time. 6. Abstraction capacity, the facility with which concrete experiences translate into conceptual models. 7. Integrative complexity, how effectively disparate knowledge domains connect into coherent frameworks. What we call IQ represents an amalgamation of these distinct capacities, explains Dr. Matheson. 2 individuals might achieve identical overall scores through entirely different cognitive profiles, one excelling in processing speed but limited in integrative complexity, another showing the reverse pattern. This multidimensional understanding transforms how we conceptualize the 7 levels. Rather than representing simply more or less intelligence, each level reflects distinctive patterns of strength and limitation across the 7 pillars. In 2020, an international research consortium conducted the most comprehensive neuroimaging study of intelligence to date. The Cognitive Connectome Project mapped the structural and functional brain characteristics of 1,200 individuals across the full IQ spectrum. What emerged was revolutionary, explains Dr. Chan, who participated in the research. We found no single neural factor that distinguished higher from lower cognitive functioning. Instead, we identified at least 12 distinct cognitive architectures, different brain organization patterns that can produce similar overall performance, but through fundamentally different neural strategies. This discovery suggests something profound. The brain operates not as a uniform processing engine, but as a dynamic, self-organizing system that develops unique configurations based on both genetic predispositions and environmental experiences. The implications are transformative, notes Dr. Prescott. If intelligence represents not a single capacity but a dynamic system of interacting competencies, then development becomes less about increasing horsepower and more about optimizing the coordination between cognitive subsystems. This perspective is supported by longitudinal intervention studies. A landmark 2019 paper published in Nature Neuroscience tracked cognitive development in 340 children across 5 years. Those receiving training in executive function coordination, essentially teaching the brain to more effectively orchestrate its various processing systems, showed significant gains not only in specific trained tasks but in general problem-solving ability. We're witnessing a paradigm shift, explains Dr. Williams. The old model asked, how much intelligence does this person have? The new model asks, how is this person's intelligence organized, and how might that organization be optimized? This shift carries revolutionary implications. If cognitive architecture proves more important than raw capacity, then perhaps the gaps between the 7 levels are not as fixed or unbridgeable as previously assumed. Different cognitive architectures might excel in different environments, with no single configuration representing universal superiority. Most profoundly, this new understanding challenges the very concept of intelligence as a stable, inherent quality. What if what we call intelligence is actually a dynamic, adaptive relationship between mind and environment, an emergent property rather than a fixed attribute? Dr. Matheson's research team has developed what they call the adaptive cognition model, which reconceptualizes intelligence as the capacity to develop effective mental models for navigating specific environments. Under this framework, different cognitive levels may simply represent different adaptive strategies rather than objective hierarchies of capability. The child diagnosed with an IQ of 70, who masters the complex social dynamics of their neighborhood, may be demonstrating sophisticated adaptive intelligence that simply isn't captured by conventional measures, Dr. Matheson explains. Meanwhile, the individual with an IQ of 145 who fails to navigate basic social relationships despite academic brilliance may show adaptive limitations despite raw processing advantages. This perspective doesn't deny the reality of cognitive differences or their practical implications. The 7 levels represent genuinely different cognitive capacities with meaningful consequences for learning, achievement, and life experience. But it suggests these differences might be better understood as variations rather than deficits, different ways of engaging with reality rather than simply better or worse ones. If intelligence represents not a single capacity but a complex constellation of cognitive adaptations, how does this transform our understanding of human potential? What does it mean for education, for technological development, for our conception of human flourishing? For education, the implications are immediate and profound. Traditional classroom structures implicitly assume cognitive homogeneity, that all students can learn the same material at roughly the same pace, through the same methods. Our exploration of the 7 levels exposes the fundamental inadequacy of this approach. Cognitive diversity is as real and significant as any other form of human diversity, explains Dr. Williams. Educational systems designed around the mythical average learner effectively serve almost no one optimally. Progressive educational models are beginning to incorporate this understanding. The Universal Design for Learning framework explicitly acknowledges cognitive diversity, providing multiple pathways to engage with material, multiple representations of content, and multiple means of demonstrating understanding. A 2022 study comparing traditional classrooms with those implementing cognitive diversity-informed approaches found striking results. When instruction was tailored to different cognitive profiles, achievement gaps between IQ levels narrowed by 47%. Students at all 7 levels showed significant gains when teaching methods aligned with their cognitive architectures. The key insight is that different cognitive levels don't simply require more or less support, notes Dr. Williams. They require fundamentally different approaches that match how their brains naturally process information. For technological development, the recognition of cognitive diversity opens new frontiers. Artificial intelligence systems are increasingly being designed to complement specific human cognitive profiles rather than to replicate generic intelligence. We're moving from the concept of AI as a universal cognitive tool to the development of specialized AI architectures that interface with particular human cognitive styles, explains Dr. Alexandra Torres, a computer scientist specializing in human-AI interaction. A Level 2 thinker and a Level 6 thinker may benefit from entirely different AI assistants optimized for their cognitive strengths and challenges. This customized approach is already yielding results in educational technology. Adaptive learning systems that recognize and respond to different cognitive profiles show dramatically better outcomes than one-size-fits-all digital tools. Students at all 7 levels demonstrate improved performance when digital environments adapt to their specific cognitive architectures. Perhaps most profoundly, the recognition of cognitive diversity challenges our fundamental concepts of human capacity and worth. The industrial era implicitly valued certain cognitive profiles, particularly those aligned with academic performance and analytical thinking, above others. But a more nuanced understanding of intelligence suggests different cognitive architectures may prove adaptive in different contexts. The same cognitive profile that struggles in a traditional classroom may thrive in environments requiring heightened social awareness, creative problem-solving, or practical implementation, notes Dr. Prescott. We're beginning to recognize that different forms of intelligence represent not a hierarchy of value but a diversity of cognitive adaptations. This perspective shifts how we might view the relationship between different cognitive levels. Rather than conceptualizing Level 1 and Level 7 as opposite ends of a single spectrum of capacity, we might better understand them as different cognitive ecosystems, each with distinctive characteristics, challenges, and potential contributions. Dr. Matheson's research team recently completed a 5-year study examining how cognitive diversity affects team performance across various tasks. Their findings challenge conventional wisdom. Teams with diverse cognitive profiles consistently outperformed homogeneous high IQ teams on complex, multidimensional problems. Different cognitive architectures perceive different aspects of complex situations, explains Dr. Matheson. The Level 2 thinker might notice practical implementation barriers that the Level 6 thinker overlooking. The Level 4 thinker might identify critical procedural steps that the Level 7 thinker assuming everyone sees automatically. This suggests something revolutionary. Human cognitive diversity may represent not a problem to be overcome but an adaptive advantage at the collective level. Just as biodiversity strengthens ecosystems by providing multiple response strategies to environmental challenges, cognitive diversity may enhance our collective intelligence by enabling multiple perspectives on complex problems. The neurodiversity movement has begun incorporating these insights, advocating for a perspective that recognizes different cognitive profiles as variations rather than deficits. This doesn't deny the real challenges faced by individuals at different cognitive levels but contextualizes these challenges within specific environmental demands rather than as inherent limitations. What we're witnessing is a fundamental reconceptualization of human cognitive potential, notes Dr. Chun. Instead of asking, "How smart is this person?" we're learning to ask, "How is this person smart?" This shift has profound implications for how we structure education, employment, and social systems. If different cognitive profiles represent not simply different amounts of the same quality but genuinely different ways of processing reality, then our institutions must evolve to accommodate and leverage this diversity rather than attempting to normalize it. The 7 levels of intelligence, viewed through this lens, represent not a hierarchy of human capacity but a map of human cognitive diversity, a recognition that minds can differ profoundly in how they process information while still contributing meaningfully to our collective understanding. As we complete our journey through the landscape of human intelligence, from the concrete thinking patterns of Level 1 to the paradigm-shifting insights of Level 7, a profound truth emerges. The mind is not a single instrument but a symphony of capabilities, each with its own voice, each contributing to the music of human cognition. For too long, we have reduced this symphony to a single measure, higher or lower, more or less, missing the rich complexity of different minds engaging with reality through different cognitive architectures. We have mistaken one kind of intelligence for intelligence itself. Yet the scientific exploration of cognitive diversity reveals something far more nuanced and meaningful. Different neural organizations create different relationships with the world, different ways of perceiving, processing, and responding to the flow of experience. Each level of intelligence represents not simply a position on a linear scale but a distinctive cognitive ecosystem with its own adaptive strengths and challenges. This recognition transforms how we might think about human potential. Intelligence becomes not a fixed quality to be measured and ranked but a dynamic relationship between mind and environment, an ongoing conversation between neural architecture and lived experience. The question shifts from how much to what kind and for what purpose. Perhaps most profoundly, this understanding reveals the fundamental incompleteness of any single cognitive perspective. No individual mind, regardless of capacity, can encompass the full spectrum of possible ways of knowing. The level 7 thinker may perceive patterns invisible to others yet miss concrete details that the level 2 thinker naturally registers. The level 5 thinker may generate brilliant theoretical frameworks that require the level 3 thinker's practical wisdom to implement effectively. Our collective intelligence, our shared capacity to understand and navigate reality, depends not on elevating a single cognitive style, but on integrating diverse cognitive perspectives into a more complete understanding than any individual mind could achieve alone. In this light, the different levels of intelligence appear not as a ladder to be climbed but as a dialogue to be engaged, a recognition that the full richness of human cognition emerges not within but between minds of different cognitive architectures, each contributing its unique perspective to our shared understanding. The true measure of our intelligence may lie not in how much cognitive capacity we individually possess, but in how effectively we integrate diverse ways of knowing into a more complete vision of what is and what might be.